Hello, everyone. I'm seeing another big problem amongst people. I call them talking heads of YouTube and so on and so forth, where they contend that in Matthew 24, we're referring to the angels. Here in Matthew 24:31, he will send forth his angels and a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Now, this comes after the abomination of desolation. It comes after the tribulation. It starts talking about things that are obviously from Old Testament references. We know what they are, but they're using apocalyptic, celestial signs, if you will, things that are happening in the sky that are definitely not controlled by people on Earth. But the problem is that they seem to contend that this part right here has something to do with evangelism or something that pertains to men, human beings on earth. And that's not the case. Clearly, here we see the word angels. This word angeloi can also mean messengers. In Revelation, there are many messengers or angels that carry out the destruction of the people on earth. Probably 770 AD Jerusalem. But I want to turn your attention to the fact that Matthew and Mark and Luke, these angeloi, let me get the 31. You'll see the angelos right here. It's all the same throughout in this chapter of Matthew 24:31. I mean, it's a word for word exchange of the exact same word. I have to go to, it didn't save my spot for some reason. But again, you can see, the angelos again. Exact same wording, right? Right there and right there. G32. We could skip Mark. I thought it wasn't. But what I'm getting at here is Mark and Matthew were written probably before the temple's destruction because of the type of details that they give based on what Jesus said. And I believe that these two accounts are more exact to what Jesus was saying. A lot of people want to contend that these things happen, and then it gets on to 36, and it talks about, something else, like Jesus hasn't come back yet. But that's not correct either. Because when you go to Luke 21, I'm having all kinds of trouble today. We have the same timeline and layout of Christ in that part of Matthew 24. But because of the things that Luke says, whereas the abomination of desolation in Matthew and Mark, here it's Jerusalem is surrounded by armies. Now that is an indication that Luke had some sort of insight, probably post Jerusalem, the sacking by the Romans, and he's writing about it. And you can even see that Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And it's also funny that Luke writes in a future tense. Jerusalem will be trampled. But it seems like he has enough information and knowledge that it's going to be armies. Now, here it doesn't say Roman armies, to be fair. It doesn't. But historically, we know that it was a Roman army that did it. And here he is saying armies, and it's being surrounded like a formation. Okay, a pre-planned attack. But then it doesn't really say when the Gentiles will be fulfilled. But we do know from other texts that it does talk about the Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles for a specific amount of time. I think it was 5.5 months. But Luke doesn't put that here. Here we see, just like Matthew and Mark, signs of the sun, moon, stars. We see this celestial, cosmic type events happening. Again, going back to the Old Testament when other destruction was happening. But then there's something different. Something else happens. There is a lack of this chapter in Mark and Luke. I'll go to Mark this time. Now remember, he's talking to the four: Peter, James, John, and Andrew about this. We get into the abomination of desolation, right? Then after the tribulation, stars, heaven, powers, and they will see the Son of Man coming on clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send forth the angels and will gather together his elect from the four winds, from the farthest earth, into the earth, to the farthest end of heaven. So this is heaven and earth. A lot of people like to say that this is some sort of evangelism. What this is, directly, is contained in Matthew 25. This gathering that they're referring to, because angels are going to be doing it. Now, it's not described, this part right here. Maybe it is, but it's not jumping out, smacking in the face in Revelation. The angels there, especially the four angels, but here it just says fourth angels, not a number, just angels in general, are going to come and gather the elect. But it does talk about making sure the bond servants are sealed before any kind of destruction does happen, before it takes place, and to hold off. But this gathering together from the four winds, from one end to the sky to the other, is part of this judgment. They're basically, in Matthew, if you go back, like to chapters 13, they're gathering the harvest from the entire planet. The ones that weren't part of the first fruits, the ones that have not been resurrected yet. But a lot of people like to say, again, that this hasn't happened yet, because they contend later on that Jesus hasn't come back yet. So they have to manipulate this part right here. Matthew 24:31. They have to turn this into something mysterious that it's not. What this is saying is the angels are going to come for the elect. Okay? We go back to Luke, and you'll see at this point there will be signs in the sun and moon, stars, and the earth. Okay, remember that part from Mark and Matthew? Son of Man will be coming with great power and glory. But guess what? Nothing about gathering the elect. Nothing about gathering up anything or anyone. It's gone. Well, it's not gone. It's just not written. Why wasn't it written? How come they didn't talk about the angels will be sent forth to gather his elect from the four winds? I'll tell you why. More than likely, Luke is making some sort of correction, or he's clarifying something. Maybe a disagreement between what Mark and Matthew have. Here he says, but when these things begin to happen, straighten up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near. That's also a problem too, because a lot of people like to say your redemption was at the cross. Some people say the redemption was at the institution of the covenant, what we call the Last Supper with Jesus right before he was arrested. But here it says your redemption is drawing near. So it hasn't even happened yet. Because you got to understand, this prophecy by Jesus didn't happen for another 30 years. 40 years, probably. So plus or minus 30, 40 years from the times these are spoken. So the redemption hasn't come yet. But it's going to come when they see all these signs. But nothing that says in the timeline, you got to look at the other ones over the timeline. When this happens, after the abomination of desolation, after you see it, then you're going to see these. It doesn't say how long after, but it's coming right after in the timeline and sequence of events. So when all these things happen, there's no mention of people being gathered up. This can mean a lot. But what it doesn't mean is that it has anything to do with anything human activity. Let's just say it doesn't have anything to do with human activity on earth, spreading the gospels, anything like that. Okay, because this is the end. This is what they call it, the grand finale of events. It's over. Your redemption will be drawing near. Then they get into this parable, and you see these from in the same spot from the other two books. As soon as they put forth leaves, you know the summer is near. So also when you see these things happening, recognize, check this out. Recognize that the kingdom of God is near. When you look in the other two books, in this spot, in the parallels, they'll say he is near. We'll look at Mark. It will say he is near, right at the door, right here. Parable of the fig tree, when you summer is near, even you too, when you see these things happen, and recognize that he is near, right at the door. Here, Luke is saying it's the kingdom of God. So no mention of the gathering, which would be the gathering of the bondservants. This would be a judgment process. And it's not found here. But what is found? The kingdom of God is near. Not Jesus. What also comes during this time? If we go to Revelation 20, we see that heaven and earth flees away. And then there's a judgment, right? And then they all get thrown into hell. And then right after that, in sequence, there's a new heaven and earth and a new Jerusalem. The old Jerusalem and the old heavens and earth, gone. New heavens and earth and a new Jerusalem, a spiritual Jerusalem. Sorry I have to use that term spiritual, but I don't know what else you call it because that's what Jesus called it in John. When he's talking to the woman at the well, right? Chapter 4 says, in spirit and in truth, that's where you'll worship God. And that's everywhere. Now, I'm not going to say the kingdom of God and New Jerusalem are the same, but then again, they are. They aren't, but they are. It's not a word-for-word exchange. We don't exactly know what they're comprised of to compare them to each other. Because it even says in Revelation, the kingdom of the world has now become the kingdom of our God. So you can say this world is the kingdom of God and we're living in it. But Luke specifically says that Jesus said to the Pharisees that the kingdom of God is inside of you. So what this most likely translates to is the kingdom of God is inside of you. The kingdom of God that you are a part of, for those who are a part of them, dwells inside of you. So you're a part of it that's inside of you. The world is now dominated by God. Like when during World War II they had Nazi-occupied France, Nazi-occupied Poland. Think of it the same way, but just on the opposite, if you will. It'd be more of a good thing than a bad thing. Let's say the Nazis were a bunch of good guys and they took over. Think of it that way. Okay, God is taking over. It's his realm now. And it exists inside of us because we're a part of it. But that's what this is saying. The kingdom of God is near. This part where they gathered up the elect, it's not mentioned because it happened. Why else wouldn't he mention it? That would be the question. That would be the debate. Why didn't he mention it? What could he possibly have meant? Did he just forget about it? He even said, if you go to Luke, and this is why I recommend everyone read the book of Luke first. Servants of the word. It seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it out for you in consecutive order, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught. That's not in Mark, and that's not in Matthew. That doesn't mean they're not authoritative. But Luke is the one who's actually conducting the investigation. He's actually looking into the details. And he did not put it in there. The other part that I was getting at, where people said, again, this is something that's going to happen in the future. It hasn't happened yet. If you go past, what do they say, Matthew 24, 35-ish, somewhere in there, depending on who it is. They say the rest of that stuff hasn't happened. Well, that's a lie. And all the stuff they do behind it, like the Noah's Ark references and the one will be taken, one will be received. You don't even need to get into an argument with someone about that because the premise is that it's still future, but that's not the way it is. That's not the way it is at all. And I'll be doing another video about that soon. Because we know here, again, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Be on your guard so that your hearts will not be weighted down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of life. And that day will not come on you suddenly like a trap, just like everyone says it's going to. Jesus is going to come one day. He's talking about everything. For it will come upon the whole, for it will come upon all those who dwell on the face of the earth. Again, earth, not planet Earth, but the land. The land of what? Judea. But keep on the alert at all times, praying that you four that I'm speaking to, Jesus is speaking to, you four have the strength to escape all these things that are about to take place and to stand before the Son of Man. Do you notice that Luke is the only one that has this as well? And to stand before the Son of Man? If Jesus says he's coming, the Son of Man is coming on a cloud with great glory at this point. A lot of people say this already happened, like amillennialist, stuff like that. I'd say most of Christianity take this view. It's more of like a Catholic view. I think the Protestants usually have it. Not the, I don't think the rapture crowd does. But then they say Matthew's saying something completely different. Even though it's exactly the same, it's different. Dual fulfillment. I don't know, people just come up with excuses. They don't have any depth. So they just change their mind every second. It doesn't matter. But the problem is, and even for the people that are watching this that don't believe me, how do you explain that Jesus says this generation will not pass away until all these things take place? Heaven and earth will pass away. It will not come on you like a trap. It will come upon all those who dwell on the face of the land. Keep alert at all times, praying that you have the strength to escape all these things that are about to take place. All these events I just spoke of. And to stand before the Son of Man, because your redemption is drawing near. You cannot move these events outside this timeline of that generation. It's impossible. It's impossible to do it the way this is written. You may be able to get away with that stuff. Someone else will be able to get away with that stuff in Mark and Matthew, especially Matthew. They've done quite a number on him. But when you come down here, Luke 21:29, that's not what Luke is saying. That's not what Matthew's saying either. And I made it quite clear. I made videos about it. But this is the death blow right here. And if anyone doesn't agree, if everyone just wants to argue like this, oh, that's something completely different, fine. Let them become a trap in their own nonsense. Because this is what Luke is saying. These are parallels of the same thing and the same events. And you cannot ignore them. You cannot get out of them. You cannot move things out of the timeline. You cannot say this part ends here in Matthew 24:35, whatever, and they're just going to happen someday. We don't know when. The only reason that happens is because it's a very old belief. They didn't even really have revelation at that time, if at all, for most people. They didn't know about revelation. Maybe they knew about it, but they didn't consult it. It was just too weird. The grammar sucked. They didn't take it seriously. But then they did find out around the 300 AD time frame that it was written by John, the apostle. So they missed the fact that the New Jerusalem came into play with it. And they created the story beforehand. And instead of just doing the right thing and saying, oh, we'd like to revise our thinking, they just kept going with the same thing. And here we are 2,000 years later, and nothing's changed. But this New Jerusalem and this kingdom of God here, it is a secret. It's out in the open, but people are just blinded to it because they think some other way. That's what they like, and that's what they want, and that's what they're going to get. But for you who are watching this, know it may sound strange. It may seem different. That's because you've been told something different in your whole life. But you cannot deny these facts. You can't. And I want to make another video about the whole, running away from, I think I already made one, but I'll probably make another one about the whole, Noah's and the future judgment. I mean, I already did one, but I'm going to touch on another little aspect. So it's basically the same thing, but you may see it strange, but read this and you'll see you cannot delay it. You cannot pull things out of the timeline and just say, oh, it's future. It just doesn't work that way. Right here, and stand before the Son of Man. This time right here, between one of the four, James, John, Andrew, and Paul, right? Now we know in John, Jesus said, if I want him to remain, to Paul, what's that to you? Paul was told that because more than likely, Jesus is saying, I need John to stay so he can write Revelation, send it out. I need him. And as far as we know, especially with church history, John was the last one to be alive. So that means out of those four people, let's just say we confirm that John was the last one to be alive on earth. That means 1 second before he took his last breath, the moment he took his last breath here on earth and died, time's up. All this had to have happened before John took his last breath on earth. It had to, because that's what it says. I know there's some really tricky people, and it's a really cool argument. I mean, bravo to these people that say, well, John did see it, but he saw it in a vision, so it's still future. It's very creative. It really is. Unfortunately, it still can't happen because all these things are about to take place. You see that? All these things are going to take place. They're going to happen. And you're going to stand before the Son of Man. That may be some sort of metaphor for something. But this generation, you stand before the Son. I mean, you can't just say, oh, John saw a vision and that's good enough. Very creative, but it just doesn't work. I've never heard of an argument that are able to get out of this. And if you want to screw with people that take the argument that I'm telling you isn't true, kind of work this in somehow. Ask them directly. So you're saying all this stuff, but I watched this video. What do you got to say about that? They can't get out of it. There are Bibles that highly manipulate this section right here to make it just sound like something else. Check it out in Greek. Check out these words in Greek. I mean, this isn't even actually correct. It's actually a little more damning than this, but this will be fine. It's damning enough to put all those other views out of business. And the other reason people still think this way is because they don't really know about this. It's there. They just ain't looking for it. They certainly aren't told to go look at it. The kingdom of God is near. Stand before the Son of Man, this generation.